When Sarah inherited her late aunt's house on Elm Street, she saw it as the perfect opportunity to start fresh. The small suburban town was quaint and quiet, contrasting her busy city life. Though old and a bit run down, the house had a charm that Sarah couldn't resist. Determined to restore it to its former glory, she spent evenings scouring Craigslist for unique pieces to furnish her new home. One night, while browsing through listings, Sarah stumbled upon an antique Victorian dollhouse. The intricate details in the photos immediately caught her eye. The listing read, "Antique Victorian Dollhouse, $50. And the miniature house looked almost like a mirror image of her own. Curiosity piqued, Sarah contacted the seller and arranged to pick it up the next day. Little did she know, this seemingly innocent purchase would mark the beginning of a nightmare. The following day, Sarah drove to the address provided by the seller, an older woman named Mrs. Whittaker. The house was at the edge of town, its weathered exterior and overgrown yard hinting at years of neglect. Sarah hesitated for a moment before knocking on the door. Mrs. Whittaker greeted her with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Inside, the house was cluttered with dolls and antique furniture, each covered in dust. The atmosphere was oppressive, but Sarah was determined to continue purchasing. "This dollhouse has been in my family for generations," Mrs. Whittaker said, her voice a raspy whisper. Despite unease, Sarah handed over the $50 and carefully carried the dollhouse to her car. Once home, Sarah placed the dollhouse in her living room and admired its craftsmanship. As she settled into bed that night, she dismissed the faint whispers and creaks as the sounds of an old house. But the following nights, she proved more disturbing. She heard distinct footsteps echoing through the halls and whispers that seemed to emanate from the dollhouse. Shadows moved in the corners of her vision, and she often felt the unsettling sensation of being watched. One night, she awoke to find all the lights in the house flickering, casting eerie shadows that danced around the room. Determined to uncover the source of these disturbances, Sarah decided to take a closer look at the dollhouse. She noticed that its layout was a replica of her home, down to minor details. In one of the rooms, she found tiny dolls that bore an uncanny resemblance to her and her late aunt. Even more unsettling was that these dolls seemed to change positions independently, adopting new stances every time she looked at them. The growing dread gnawed at Sarah. She couldn't shake the feeling that the dollhouse was watching her, waiting for something. Desperate for answers, she resolved to confront Mrs. Whittaker and learn the truth about the dollhouse's eerie history. Driven by fear and determination, Sarah returned to Mrs. Whittaker's house. The old woman seemed to be expecting her, a knowing glint in her eyes as she opened the door. Sarah wasted no time in demanding answers about the dollhouse. Mrs. Whittaker sighed and led Sarah into a dimly lit parlor filled with more dolls than before. "The dollhouse has a dark history," she began. "It was created by a master craftsman in the 19th century, a man obsessed with capturing the essence of life in his miniatures. But he dabbled in dark arts, imbuing the dollhouse with an evil spirit. It traps the souls of its owners, feeding on their fears and slowly driving them insane." Horrified, Sarah felt the walls closing in around her. She pressed on, asking for any way to break the curse. Mrs. Whittaker's eyes gleamed with malice. "You must destroy it," she whispered, "but it won't let you go easily." With this knowledge, Sarah returned home, feeling the weight of the dollhouse's presence more than ever. She noticed the dolls had moved again, now positioned in what looked like a mockery of her fear and desperation. Determined to end this nightmare, she gathered a hammer and a can of gasoline. As she struck the dollhouse with the hammer, the house around her seemed alive. Unseen forces pushed back against her blows, filling the air with an ear-splitting screech. The walls bled a dark, viscous fluid, and the tiny dolls wailed, their eyes filled with an unnatural light. Visions of terror assaulted her mind. Ghastly figures, shadowy apparitions, and twisted versions of her face leered at her from every corner. The dollhouse fought back with all its might, but Sarah refused to relent. She doused it with gasoline, her hands shaking as she struck a match. The flames roared to life, consuming the dollhouse in a violent inferno. The screams grew louder, then abruptly cut off as the dollhouse crumbled into ashes. Sarah collapsed, her body covered in burns and cuts, but the oppressive presence that had haunted her was finally gone. The struggle had left her shaken and scarred, but she had survived. The dollhouse was destroyed, and its curse was lifted. However, the experience had taken its toll, and Sarah knew she could never truly escape the horrors she had faced. With the dollhouse reduced to ashes, Sarah lay on the floor, her body trembling from the ordeal. The house around her was silent, and the oppressive weight that had haunted her for weeks had now lifted. She slowly got to her feet, wincing from the pain of her injuries, and surveyed the charred remains of the dollhouse. Relief washed over her, but it was tinged with a deep sense of trauma. Over the next few days, Sarah tried to return to a semblance of normalcy. She cleaned the mess, bandaged her wounds, and packed her belongings. The house, once so full of potential, now felt tainted by the horrors she had endured. Even though the dollhouse was gone, she couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Desperate to put the nightmare behind her, Sarah left Elm Street. She sold the house quickly, not caring about the loss she took on the sale. The new owners, oblivious to the house's dark history, seemed thrilled with their purchase. Sarah didn't have the heart to warn them, hoping against hope that the destruction of the dollhouse had indeed lifted the curse. Before leaving town, she made one last visit to Mrs. Whittaker's house. The old woman's residence was empty, with a for sale sign in the yard. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. She realized that Mrs. Whittaker had been a part of the curse, a guardian of the dollhouse's sinister secrets. She wondered how many others had fallen victim to the same trap. Sarah drove away from Elm Street, vowing to be more cautious about the seemingly innocent treasures she found online. As she merged onto the highway, she glanced in the rearview mirror, half expecting to see something lurking in the back seat. But there was nothing, just the open road ahead and a lingering dread that would never entirely leave her. Sarah's departure from Elm Street marked the beginning of a new chapter, but the scars of her ordeal lingered. Settling into a small apartment in a neighboring town, she tried to rebuild her life. The nightmares persisted, however, haunting her sleep with visions of the dollhouse and its evil presence. She sought help from a therapist, sharing the story in fragmented pieces. The therapist listened with a mix of concern and disbelief, but offered support to help Sarah cope with her trauma. Through therapy and time, Sarah gradually learned to manage her fear, though the memory of those harrowing nights never fully faded. One evening, as she browsed online, Sarah noticed a familiar listing. Antique Victorian Dollhouse, $50. Her heart pounded, recognizing the photos immediately. Panic surged through her, but then she realized something different. This listing had been flagged and taken down within minutes. Knowing others knew of the dollhouse's dark history, relief washed over her. She shared her experience on various online forums, warning people about the dangers lurking behind innocent-looking antiques on Craigslist. Her story, though terrifying, served as a cautionary tale that quickly spread, preventing more unsuspecting buyers from falling into the same trap. Though the experience had left her deeply traumatized, Sarah found solace in knowing she had helped others. The dollhouse was gone, but its memory served as a reminder of the hidden dangers that could be found in the most unexpected places. As she continued her life, Sarah remained vigilant, always cautious about the seemingly innocent treasures she encountered. And somewhere, in the forgotten corners of the internet, her story lived on, a beacon of warning for the curious and the unwary.